You will never truly organize your life as long as you keep ignoring this. There is an uncomfortable truth that very few people are willing to face, and perhaps because it is so uncomfortable, it is often avoided for years. You can organize your schedule, clean your home, set ambitious goals for the future, download productivity apps, watch countless videos about discipline, personal growth, and self-improvement. You can try to control every detail of your daily routine, and yet still feel as if something is out of place. And maybe you've experienced that yourself. Maybe there are moments when everything appears organized on the outside, but inside there is a weight that is difficult to explain, a constant sense of confusion, a tiredness that doesn't disappear even after resting, and a silent emptiness that remains present even on the days when everything seems to be working. It's a strange feeling, because from the outside, nobody notices. People see your responsibilities, your commitments, your efforts, and your attempts to keep moving forward. But there is a huge difference between looking okay and truly being okay. And it is precisely at this point that a question begins to emerge, a question many people spend years avoiding. Why does nothing ever seem to be enough? Why are some people able to completely transform their lives while others remain trapped in the same cycles for years? Why do so many changes last only a few weeks before everything returns to exactly the way it was before? Perhaps the answer lies in something you have been ignoring for a very long time. Perhaps it is much closer than you think. Because true disorder rarely begins on the outside. It begins within. And that idea may sound simple at first, but the more you reflect on it, the more you realize that something much deeper is happening beneath the surface. Carl Jung believed that whatever remains unconscious continues to influence our lives silently. In other words, what you cannot see may still be controlling you. What you do not understand may still be shaping your decisions. What you continue to ignore may still be determining your results. And perhaps one of the greatest mistakes people make is trying to organize the effects while continuing to ignore the cause. They try to control external chaos while running from internal chaos. They try to change their outcomes without understanding their patterns. They try to build a new life without understanding who is truly making their choices. And while all of this is happening, something inside them continues asking for attention. Something that may have been ignored for far too long. Something that continues to influence their decisions, relationships, energy levels, confidence, and even the way they see themselves. The problem is that what we ignore never truly disappears. Most of the time, it simply finds new ways to express itself. And perhaps that is exactly why so many people remain trapped in the same problems. They move to a different city, yet carry the same conflicts. They change jobs, yet repeat the same frustrations. They enter new relationships, yet encounter the same pain. They change their routines, yet continue feeling the same emptiness. And after a while, they begin to believe that the problem is their luck, their circumstances, or their destiny. But what if it isn't? What if the real problem is hidden somewhere within you? Because true transformation does not happen when you change your environment. It happens when you change your awareness. And before we go any further, there is something important you need to understand. Your current life is not built only by the decisions you consciously make. It is also shaped by everything happening within you without your awareness. Fears that were never confronted, wounds that were never understood, emotions that were pushed aside, desires that were abandoned, entire parts of your personality that were hidden away in order to please others. All of it still exists. All of it still influences you. All of it still participates in your choices, even when you believe you have left it behind. And perhaps that is exactly where the real conversation begins. Carl Jung called this hidden region of the personality the shadow. And perhaps it is precisely this part of yourself that you have been ignoring without even realizing it. When people hear the word shadow, they often imagine something dark, something negative, something that should be eliminated. But Jung saw it very differently. The shadow is not made up only of the parts of yourself that you dislike. It also contains the parts you abandoned, the parts you suppressed, the parts you buried in order to become who you thought you needed to be. Your authenticity, your creativity, your courage, your spontaneity, your deepest truth. Parts of yourself that may have been hidden because, at some point in your life, you learned that being accepted was more important than being real. And the longer these parts remain hidden, the more divided your life becomes. One part of you wants to move forward. Another part continues to resist. One part wants growth. Another part is afraid. One part dreams of change, another remains attached to old patterns. And this silent battle takes place every single day, whether you notice it or not. Perhaps that is exactly why some goals feel so difficult to achieve. Not because you are incapable, not because you lack intelligence, not because you lack potential, but because there is an internal conflict taking place beneath the surface. Imagine trying to row a boat forward while an invisible current keeps pulling you backward. No matter how hard you work, progress feels slow. And eventually, you begin to question yourself. You begin to wonder whether you are the problem, whether you lack discipline, whether you simply do not have what it takes. But the real issue is not your ability. The real issue is the resistance you cannot see, the resistance that continues operating behind the scenes. This is what happens when your conscious mind wants one thing, while your unconscious mind remains attached to something else. It is why so many transformations fail, why so many promises made to ourselves are eventually abandoned, why so many people start with excitement and end up exactly where they began. There is a part of them that has not yet been understood, a part that continues influencing their choices without asking permission. Perhaps that is why you procrastinate on the things that matter most. Perhaps that is why you walk away from projects that could genuinely change your life. Perhaps that is why you remain in situations you already know you should leave behind. Or perhaps it is why fear continues to appear even when you are fully capable of moving forward. Because the problem is not only what you do. Often, the problem is what you still cannot see. And here is a truth that has the power to completely change the way you understand your life. You will never truly organize your life while continuing to ignore yourself. That may sound like a simple statement, but very few people fully grasp its meaning. Ignoring yourself does not simply mean avoiding self-reflection. It means abandoning your emotions, ignoring the signals your mind keeps sending, living on autopilot, repeating the same patterns without questioning them. Spending years reacting to life without understanding what is actually happening within you. And the longer this continues, the further you drift from your true nature. The consequences rarely arrive all at once. They appear slowly. First comes discouragement, then confusion, then a feeling you cannot quite explain, then emptiness, and eventually, a quiet question begins to emerge. A question many people carry for years. Why do I feel this way when everything seems fine? Perhaps because what truly needs attention continues to be ignored. Perhaps because you are trying to fix the branches while neglecting the roots. And as long as the roots remain untouched, the same struggles continue to grow back. Different names, different faces, different circumstances, yet somehow the same pain, the same frustration, the same patterns. And perhaps that is why so many people spend their entire lives trying to change their environment without realizing that what truly needs to change exists within them. It is an uncomfortable realization, but it is also a liberating one. Because the moment you understand this, something begins to shift. You stop fighting only the symptoms, and you begin searching for the source. And perhaps this is where most people make a mistake without even realizing it. When they begin feeling this emptiness, this confusion, or this constant sense of being disconnected from themselves, they assume they need more motivation, more discipline, more productivity, more effort. So they work harder, they stay busier, they take on more responsibilities. They fill every free moment with distractions. But there is something interesting about all of this. The more you run from yourself, the more exhausted you become. Because running requires energy. Maintaining masks requires energy. Suppressing emotions requires energy. Pretending everything is fine requires energy. And after a while, you begin to feel as though you are living a life that no longer belongs to you. Perhaps that is exactly what is happening right now. Maybe you are functioning, but not truly living. Maybe you are surviving, but not growing. Maybe you are busy, but not aligned. And to understand why, we need to explore another important concept from Carl Jung, the persona. Jung used this term to describe the social mask we wear, the version of ourselves that we present to the world, the identity we create in order to be accepted, respected, admired, or understood. And to some extent, this is perfectly normal. Everyone has a persona. Everyone adapts their behavior depending on the situation. The problem begins when the mask becomes more important than the person behind it. When you spend so much time trying to meet other people's expectations that you lose contact with your own truth. When your decisions stop coming from authenticity and start coming from fear. Fear of rejection, fear of criticism, fear of disappointing others, fear of not being enough. And little by little, without even noticing it, you stop listening to the one voice that matters most, your own. Perhaps you've been doing this for years, perhaps since childhood. Maybe you learned that being accepted was safer than being authentic. Maybe you learned to hide certain parts of yourself in order to fit in. Maybe you learned that your value depended on pleasing other people. Maybe you became so accustomed to playing roles that you forgot who you were before those roles existed. And this happens to far more people than most realize. Because there is a profound difference between living an authentic life and living a life designed to satisfy expectations. From the outside, both can look successful. Both can appear impressive. Both can seem perfectly normal. But internally, the difference is enormous. When you spend your life trying to become who others want you to be, a division begins to form within you. One part of you knows who you truly are. Another part keeps trying to earn approval. One part longs for freedom. Another remains trapped by fear. One part wants truth. Another keeps chasing validation. And this internal division creates suffering, because the human soul cannot find peace while it is at war with itself. Perhaps that is why certain achievements never feel as satisfying as you expected. Perhaps that is why some people spend years chasing success only to discover that success alone does not fill the emptiness. Perhaps that is why goals that once seemed so important suddenly lose their meaning once they are achieved. Because the problem was never the goal itself. The problem was believing that external accomplishments could heal an internal disconnection, a disconnection from yourself. And the longer that disconnection remains, the more life begins to feel mechanical. You wake up. You complete your responsibilities. You solve problems. You follow routines. You keep moving. But something feels missing. As if you are watching your life instead of truly experiencing it. As if the days are passing by without your full presence. And it is often at this point that people begin searching for answers everywhere else. In new habits, new relationships, new opportunities, new goals, new environments. Yet they rarely ask the most important question of all. A question that has the power to change everything. Who have I become while trying to be everything everyone else expected me to be? And perhaps that question feels uncomfortable, but that is precisely why it matters. Because the questions that transform our lives are rarely comfortable. They are honest. And every genuine transformation begins with honesty. The honesty to stop running. The honesty to stop pretending. The honesty to face the truth that has been waiting patiently within you all along. And that truth may be far more important than anything you have been searching for in the outside world. Because there is something fascinating about the truth. You can ignore it for months. You can ignore it for years. You can bury it beneath work, responsibilities, distractions, achievements, and endless noise. But it never truly leaves. It waits, quietly, patiently, remaining present even when you pretend it is not there. And perhaps that is exactly what is happening in your life right now. Perhaps there is a truth within you that has been trying to get your attention for a very long time. Maybe it is trying to show you that you are carrying burdens that were never yours to carry. Maybe it is revealing that certain relationships have already run their course. Maybe it is showing you that the life you built was shaped more by external expectations than by your own inner desires. Or perhaps it is reminding you of something you left behind long ago. A dream, a passion, a part of your identity that slowly disappeared beneath the weight of obligation. And the longer you remain disconnected from these truths, the further you drift from yourself. The consequences do not always arrive as a dramatic crisis. Most of the time, they emerge quietly. You continue working. You continue achieving. You continue fulfilling your responsibilities. You continue moving through life. But your sense of presence begins to fade. Days start blending together. Experiences lose their depth. Accomplishments feel less meaningful. And a subtle emptiness begins to grow. An emptiness that cannot be explained by circumstances alone. Perhaps because what is missing is not something outside of you. Perhaps what is missing is a part of you. And this is where many people believe they need more motivation. But maybe motivation is not what they are lacking. Maybe what they are lacking is meaning. Because motivation is temporary. It rises and falls. It comes and goes. It depends on emotions, energy, and circumstances. Meaning is different. Meaning endures. When you have meaning, you can continue moving forward even when motivation disappears. When you have meaning, difficult days no longer stop you. When you have meaning, challenges become part of the journey rather than reasons to quit. And perhaps that is why meaning is far more powerful than motivation could ever be. But finding meaning requires something many people spend their entire lives avoiding. It requires finding yourself. And that may be the most important journey a human being can undertake. Not the pursuit of success, not the pursuit of wealth, not the pursuit of recognition, but the pursuit of authenticity, the pursuit of becoming who you truly are. This is what Carl Jung called individuation, the lifelong process of integrating the different parts of yourself and becoming whole. Not becoming perfect, not becoming superior, not becoming someone else, but becoming fully yourself. And that process requires something modern life constantly tries to take away from us: silence. Because silence reveals. In silence, you begin to notice thoughts that usually go unnoticed. In silence, hidden emotions rise to the surface. In silence, fears become visible. In silence, forgotten desires begin to speak again. In silence, you encounter parts of yourself that have been waiting years to be acknowledged. Perhaps that is why so many people struggle with being alone. Because solitude creates an encounter with yourself. And that encounter can be uncomfortable. It can reveal truths you would rather avoid. It can expose wounds that never fully healed. It can bring forward questions you spent years suppressing. But it can also become one of the most liberating experiences of your life. Because everything begins to change when you stop seeing your struggles as enemies and start seeing them as messages. Perhaps your anxiety is trying to tell you something. Perhaps your frustration is trying to reveal something. Perhaps your exhaustion is pointing towards something important. Perhaps the emptiness you feel from time to time is not a problem to eliminate. Perhaps it is a signal to understand. Because the mind often speaks through thoughts, but the deeper self often speaks through symptoms. And when those signals are ignored for too long, they tend to grow louder. Not as punishment, but as an invitation. An invitation to look inward. An invitation to pay attention. An invitation to finally face what needs to be transformed. And perhaps that is exactly why you found this video. Because some part of you already knows there is something deeper happening beneath the surface. Some part of you already senses that the answers you have been searching for cannot be found entirely in the external world. They are waiting within you, patiently, quietly, waiting to be discovered. And perhaps the most encouraging truth of all is this: you do not have to solve everything today. You do not have to transform your entire life overnight. You do not need to have all the answers right now, because real transformation rarely happens that way. It does not usually arrive as a dramatic breakthrough. More often, it begins with awareness, a realization, a moment of clarity that changes the way you see yourself. And once that happens, something begins to shift, not in your circumstances at first, not in your environment, but within you. And every lasting transformation begins there, with honesty. The honesty to acknowledge what is no longer working. The honesty to recognize the patterns that keep repeating. The honesty to stop blaming everything outside yourself and begin looking inward. Because as long as every problem is someone else's fault, you remain powerless to change it. But the moment you accept responsibility for your own growth, something remarkable happens. You reclaim your power. You reclaim your ability to choose. You reclaim your ability to create a different future. And this is important. Responsibility is not the same as self-blame. Responsibility is not punishment. Responsibility is freedom. Because blame keeps you trapped in the past. Responsibility allows you to build the future. And perhaps that is one of the most important lessons hidden within Jung's work. The goal is not to become perfect. The goal is not to eliminate every weakness. The goal is not to create an idealized version of yourself. The goal is integration. To bring together the parts of yourself that have been separated. To acknowledge the fears you once denied. To recognize the strengths you once ignored. To face the truths you once avoided. To become whole. Because wholeness is very different from perfection. Perfection is an impossible standard. Wholeness is acceptance. It is the willingness to embrace every part of who you are and allow those parts to work together rather than against one another. And when that begins to happen, life starts to feel different. The constant internal resistance begins to fade. Decisions become clearer. Relationships become more authentic. Your energy is no longer consumed by endless inner conflict. And little by little, you begin to feel something that may have been missing for a long time. Alignment. Not because your life suddenly becomes easy. Not because all your problems disappear. But because you are no longer fighting yourself. You are finally moving in the same direction. And perhaps that is what true order really means. Not controlling every detail, not creating a perfect routine, not eliminating uncertainty, but creating harmony between what you think, what you feel, what you believe, and how you live. When those things begin to align, life changes in ways that no productivity system ever could. And maybe that is why Jung's ideas continue to resonate with people all over the world, because they remind us that the answers we seek are often much closer than we imagine. They remind us that what remains unconscious continues shaping our lives until we are willing to face it. And they remind us that the greatest journey is not the journey outward. It is the journey inward, the journey toward understanding yourself, the journey toward accepting yourself, the journey toward becoming who you were always meant to be. So before this video ends, I want to leave you with a question. A simple question, but perhaps one of the most important questions you can ask yourself. What truth have you been avoiding? What part of yourself has been asking for attention? What is the one thing you already know deep down, but have been afraid to face? Take a moment and think about it. And if you feel comfortable, share your answer in the comments below. I'd genuinely love to hear your thoughts, because sometimes a single moment of honesty can become the beginning of a completely different life. And if this video helped you see something you hadn't seen before, if it gave you a new perspective, or helped you better understand yourself, make sure to leave a like. Not only does it support the channel, but it also helps this message reach other people who may need to hear it. And if you're interested in Carl Jung, psychology, self-awareness, personal growth, and the deeper questions of human nature, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. There are many more journeys ahead, and I'd be honored to have you join us. And remember this, the life you want may not begin with a new opportunity. It may not begin with a new relationship. It may not begin with a new goal. It may begin the moment you stop running from yourself. Because true transformation begins where honesty meets courage. And true order begins the moment you become conscious of who you really are.